rolling and go ahead and ask the question.
So what's your opinion about my hobby?
This wasn't supposed to be a hobby. This is an extravagance.
She didn't get any merch. Hobby of ours. And we are back with this tea time hobby of ours. Cheers. RowCity edition. Thank you and welcome to your home. Hanging out in your house today, meeting your lovely family, brother, and doing what we always do, which is chit-chat about watches. And in today's episode, had a little bit of comedy from his missus, but it brings to mind the subject of what watches may have meant to you throughout your life. Like when you were a boy, and we found out what your missus thinks about it, and the last part will be what your son will stand to inherit, because your collection's always changing. Mm-hmm. He could be happy one minute about the inheritance and not the next. Mm-hmm. So let's dive into it. Tell me a little bit about what it was like, what watches may have meant for you as a boy.
My first distinct memory of a watch is my father's Rolex. It was a Oyster Perpetual, or just an Oyster. I don't think 34 but I know it was an Oyster.
Okay.
And I think he bought it in the 1960s. He was in the Merchant Marine. He's a marine engineer, and he sailed around the world for 10, 12 years. And I think I remember my mom telling me that he bought it in Aden, in a port.
In where?
Aden.
Aden?
in West Asia.
Oh, okay.
So my dad bought his Rolex in the 60s, and he was in the Merchant Marine when he was sailing around the world. He bought it in the port of Aden, it's in Yemen.
Oh, it's in Yemen? Okay.
Yeah, and there's an approach my dad had to things, which is an approach I've now recently adopted, which is that he's on the one, he's generally a man of like simple, of very few wants right now. Earlier in his life, he enjoyed good things, but very few select things. And he looked after them very well. Like, he had a pen with which he wrote all his exams. It was a Parker pen, beautiful fountain pen.
Yeah.
And he wore the same watch for, I think, 23, 24 years, and it stopped working. And something I never forgive my mother about, she sold it to, in India, you have these guys who come and they buy junk. And she sold it for, in India, then it wasn't a small sum of money, 600 rupees, but still, I keep telling my mom that...
The junk guy got it.
The junk guy, and he paid top dollar in junk guy schemes. They're called kabadiwalas in India. Kabadi literally means junk.
Wow.
But it had stopped working. But then again, when I think about it, India is also known for its you've heard of the phrase, the Mumbai mod. I don't know if you've heard this, that Bombay is known for Franken watches, so you generally
well, if it's an Oris watch, it's called a Mumbai Special. That's
the
way I've heard it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Amongst the...
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to tell. But yeah, if you ever start just randomly looking for Oris watches, you're going to see... I don't know why they call them the Mumbai Special, other than they come out of India, and that's popular there, but they're not... Actually, some of them look quite nice, but it's clearly not something standard that Oris would do. Yeah. Some of them even look like pocket watch era conversions. Like a lot of pocket watch conversions, you can easily tell that it wasn't made by Omega or whomever, but some of them, I don't know why. It must be because that's where they came from, or that's where they're getting sold out of.
Yeah, it's very strange. I would never make the Oris India connection at all. I know Rolex has the same iconic kind of appeal, and Omega is big, and now sort of in the last 10, 12 years post globalization, watches are a decent market in India. They also are a kind of status symbol in an odd kind of way, like cell phones are a status symbol in India in a way they just aren't in the West. But anyway, I'm sort of digressing on that. So that was my first memory of watches, and it was a silver dial, beautiful watch.
Your first memory was the junk man taking your dad's watch.
No, the first memory was the watch itself.
That's a bad first memory.
Yeah, that would be a bad first memory. But
wait, did your dad know the junk man got it?
Yeah, it stopped working, and it was practically impossible to get these things
serviced back then. Okay.
Yeah, and my dad had picked up these things. He wasn't a huge accumulator, but He had, like we had this beautiful Philips turntable which he picked up from Amsterdam in the 60s, and when it stopped working, it just stopped working. There was nobody who could fix it.
I guess it was a different time. Like if it stopped working, maybe you didn't invest the money. You didn't know, right?
I mean, you didn't have Rolex ADs in India. You just didn't. You had, because it was a state-controlled economy, so you had the state deciding, there was one company, two companies that manufactured cars. There was one watch company called HMT, which did some pretty cool watches.
Oh, okay.
And then after that, my dad wore HMT watches, and I remember those. And those were.
I think I remember that brand from. It must have been.
And then
one of the YouTube channels, something like
that.
Yeah.
There's some pretty cool, there's a cool history to those, and there are some cool watches that you can find on eBay. Again, whether they're modded or not, I don't know. And then as a child, I was never really much into them. At some point, I had, one of those the Casio that everyone has, right?
The square one,
the square one,
5600.
Whatever, one of the digital ones, right? Because digital was everything, right? And this quartz was everything, digital was everything, and then I just had quartz watches for the longest time. I liked the idea of a watch, much smaller watches. And then I remember my in-laws got me a couple of watches, really nice ones.
Some good in-laws right there.
Yeah, they're nice, really Indian brand called Titan, and I wore those watches, lasted for a long, long time.
Wait, Titan?
Titan, and they're manufactured by the Indian global conglomerate Tata.
Because I know the Titan brand from the. No, I'm thinking of Titus. My bad.
So this is a sort of Indian brand.
That's
but
cool.
in India, I was never really into the the luxury watches. And there are some brands that are very popular in India. Like, I don't know, is it Rado or Rado?
Rado is hugely popular in different sectors of the world.
It's very popular in India.
And from what I understand, they make a good watch. Like the Captain Cook is a very attractive dive watch.
Right.
But they're super popular in outside of the U.S.
Yeah.
I think it's in the Middle East and some parts of Europe.
Yeah.
And certainly, obviously, in India. They're huge.
Yeah. Movado is another brand I've seen in Seiko's. You find Citizen is very popular, but I really wasn't much into them. And then, I would appreciate the beauty. And then I want to say about 2014 or so.
I have a real quick story to insert.
Yeah, please.
Me and my buddy went into the Movado dealership years ago.
Yeah.
And this unusual fellow was working there. I guess he was out in LA to be an actor. And he greets us very broadly with, "Welcome to the world of Movado." And we're like, okay, we just wanted to see a watch real quick. "Welcome to the world of Movado." But okay, go continue.
I think another. No, I was just thinking another dealer. I remember getting to him, and I was talking about. He did not use the word watch the entire time I was there. I think there was a Montblanc store in San Francisco downtown. He just called it a timepiece, and he said, I would like to own a distinguished timepiece one day." He said, "I would like to own more distinguished time." He's a very nice gentleman. But
older guy or younger guy?
Older guy.
Oh, okay.
Well, sort of around my age, and I'm an older guy now. I guess I'm sort of middle age. So then
you were 14. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
so you were 14. What happened?
When I got, I think those electronic watches.
Like Hamilton?
No, in India, just the Casio.
Oh, right.
And then, of course, the Titan was much later in the 90s. And the Titan Indian watches, I had a couple of those. But those were, I think, much smaller. The diameter must have been 33. To me, that was the default. And then for a long time, I just wasn't into watches. But about in 2014, that's what I meant.
Okay.
2014 is when I kind of, got into them. And I think one of the first watches that seized my imagination was the Tudor Heritage Ranger 41 mm.
Oh, so the first one.
That was the first one, and I got it off eBay. And,
that was the Ranger.
That was the Ranger.
The Ranger 41.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe slightly odd duck, but it was nice. And then I think what really attracted me about watches, I think it's the perfect combination of science and art. To me, technology, science, and art.
You know what the perfect combination is? When the camera is showing us both. That's the perfect combination. My bad. Keep going, brother.
Yeah, so it's, and I remember reading this, I think it was a Hodinkee article, that a watch is really a beautiful little gearbox. Yeah. So when I was a child, because my father's an engineer, I remember, him talking about engines, talking about cranes. There was always conversation about this, and I didn't pursue career or degree in science or technology, but I just always had, a well-crafted machine. There's something about the beauty of machines.
Respecting it.
Respecting it, and just, the same reason why I love cars, right? A beautiful car is almost an accident. It's a work of magic, right? It's something that works beautifully, but it looks like a fabulous painting too. I mean, it's got that same aesthetic appeal.
So then it has that visceral experience as well.
Absolutely.
It's almost like art in motion.
It is art in motion.
Wow, that was really, I just made that up right now. That makes me seem really smart.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's it. And watches are about sort of motion.
Art in motion.
And then, there's just sort of something about, the notion of time, right? Like it's the one entity that I don't want to sound pretentious, but it's the one entity that we all sort of negotiate and understand and change our relationship to the older you get, right? When you're young, your life it's like time is endless. You have all the time in the world, right?
And
then, as I get older, I get very acutely conscious of how precious time is.
Well, I mean, time and land, they're not making more of either. The way I've heard it said is the funny thing about time is that there's so much and so little of it.
Yeah.
Which is really Einstein, right? Put your hand on a hot stove for a minute. It's going to take forever. Talk to a beautiful woman for a minute and it will be gone in a second. And it's all about perspective and frame. So so post 2014, after you got the Ranger, we didn't get to know each other. We looked it up. Was it
2015 or 16?
2015?
Yeah.
Because you having that Ranger rings a bell in my head, like maybe you'd just gotten out of it. And we put one of the other videos, our broship story. But after that point, we touched upon it, you've gone through a lot of different watches.
Yeah.
Some great, some not as great by your own admission, some hype pieces, some available pieces, and it's been like this this wave of going to this to having like a whole bunch, and then ventilating the collection and then dialing it in. And I think what I hope for your collection is once you start fine-tuning it, because we also talked about how you do believe and subscribe to the Perfect 4 watch collection, and those are roughly, you can treat those like categories.
Yeah.
And then like you have your 4 pillars, then maybe you swap this pillar out.
Yeah.
You've got stability over here.
Yeah.
And then you're getting to enjoy the watches over the course of your ownership of them.
Absolutely. And I also try to I'm trying to, across the 4, hit a whole bunch of other different things. So there's 4, you want the category of sort of the beater, something that can function as a dress watch, or a dress watch, a pilot, a diver, a racing, a chronograph. But I also like something with different kinds of hands, different kinds of dials, indices, and I think I'm getting there. I don't think I'm that far because by experiencing a number of watches, just in terms of thickness, size, lug width, and so on, there's a lot that's been eliminated.
There's a really funny dog who's super cute and wonderful.
Yeah.
Rouster off to the right, giving me an eye. But keep on trucking, brother.
Yeah. So I think that's been the other advantage that you don't. I mean, there's some watches which I go back to, like the Seiko SPB series, because some of them, the combinations of the dial and the bezel are, the color combinations are just very beautiful. But it's again the thickness and the width at 40.5. It's just a hair too large, and the thickness is I think it's a little thick. Same thing with something like the Breguet Aeronaval. Just, I love it. It's beautiful, but it's again too thick. The diameter is, it's almost 14 mm.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's rather thick.
It is 14 mm, and I don't know if it's
No, please go ahead.
No, it's just the shape of my wrist or something. The width is perfect. 39 is just beautiful.
But you don't, like, I also do not care for tall watches, the watches that stand proud.
Yeah.
But I think, I'd be curious, I'm thinking around your collection right now. There's no watch in your current collection that has been there since the beginning of us knowing one another. Other than the Bucherer from your family.
Yes.
That's different.
That's different. That's an heirloom. I've kept it. I wore it a couple of times. The kind of watch I wore it once too. It's a little on the small side, teardrop lugs. 34 mm. It's actually belonged to my wife's grandfather, and
Okay.
it hadn't worked for 20 odd years, and then Sarah
Then you had,
restored it.
you had a Saragan.
As I mentioned, so I wore it, once when we went to the symphony, and maybe a couple of other times. But
I didn't know you guys got posh. That's cool.
well, not really. It's not being posh. I mean, it's nice to go to the. I haven't been in ages.
You have to put the pinky out when you drink your tea at the symphony, right?
I know. Cricket
So,
tea
but is there anything that's been in the
not that long.
Not even any of the Seikos.
No, not even any of the Seikos, but I've had some for like several years. Like the Speedmasters and the the Black Polar, and then there's a couple which I would have probably the Black Polar Explorer I might have kept.
Yeah, we've had some shared regrets over some of the pieces that we passed on, which we got into the other day, but I think it's a great journey. Okay, so we already heard your wife's opinion of your collection and hobby earlier. Let's move on to what you hope your son may adopt from your experiential, role with watches. What watches have played a role in your life, and what you hope to leave him. We don't like to talk about that, but eventually, we're all renting everything anyway. So
it's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
What do you think he's going to be? Do you think he's going to get into watches?
I think he is. He already is. He's since the last 3-4 years, because I think boys at that age tend to hero worship their dads, and so he was very excited. I got him a couple of swatches which he enjoyed.
Right on.
And then we went through a number of digital watches. He had a Casio at some point of time, or just the Amazon's unbranded, made in China, just regular digital watch, and he just enjoyed a bunch of those. They're waterproof, they last for a while, then they break. He's had an Apple Watch for a while, which he really likes.
Oh, okay.
And he enjoys that.
You get a mechanical on his wrist.
I've got he still has a nice little swatch with, it's got a nice design.
Like a System 51 or something?
Smaller, no, it's
Smaller?
the kids line, and at 32, 33, and I don't think it's meant as a tribute to Minecraft, but for many years he was a fan of Minecraft. He still plays a little bit, and the design on that watch looked, the pixel, it has a sort of pixelated design.
Pixelation design.
It looks a bit like, the building blocks of Minecraft. So he will, I think he enjoys, because for this generation, devices being what they are, the Apple Watch is kind of, more than a smartwatch. The Apple Watch in particular is what's sort of iconic. But I think
but it's your job as a dad to steer your son.
I will steer him towards the mechanical watches. So I'd like to leave him,
An Omega?
3 or 4, the Rolex and Omega, and
okay.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know if a JLC dress. I'd love a moon phase, but again, as I've repeated in a couple of videos, I don't dress formally at all.
Right.
But at some point, if I get there's a few moon phases that are just stunningly beautiful. The JLC is one of them. If I get a moon phase, because there's something about that being so beautiful. It's a memory kind of watch, right?
Yeah, it's fundamentally a poetic complication.
It's utterly useless, and like many useless things, very beautiful.
A design that exists for little more than its beauty, even though I guess fishermen used to pay attention to the waxing and waning of the moon as. Yeah. I guess it's because the fish behave differently, or it's maybe when there's going to be light out. Tides. That's actually probably better. Yeah. I was not good at science. So moving along, so we hope to. So if you're going to leave him the Rolex Polar, that means you're going to be holding on to that one.
I will hold on to that one, and
Wow, you heard it here.
Yeah. No, I will hold.
RowCity promising not to part with that one.
And there's a couple I have out. I mean, these are also watches that I've sort of pursued, because I'm still hunting that perfect 4. But I'll say this, that one of the others which is out on consignment, it's very good condition, and hopefully I can get back.
Yeah, I see Dad shuffling through a few more watches before.
A few more, but I could more than live with that. That's a gorgeous watch in itself.
And that's a good thing. Maybe if I have some kids, I'll have some watches to give them too. Well, thank you for inviting me into your home, brother. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you this trip, and get to meet your beautiful family and spend some time in this wonderful, beautiful hobby of ours. Always a pleasure, bro.
Just take care, man.
Peace.
Peace.